Hey, what's going on, everybody? Bauer Brown here. Welcome back to the channel. In the video that I have for you guys today, we're gonna be wrapping some things up. So by the time that we're done with this video, that's gonna be it. Everything's gonna be all finished up with this tutorial series, and you guys are gonna be making your own map. And of course, I'm just kidding. There's no way we're done. No way. We got plenty of good stuff to get into. We got traffic splines and placeables and man, you name it. We're going to be painting by splines, and we're going to be doing all kinds of cool stuff. And we've got lots and lots and lots of it left. So no way, Jack, are we done yet. So you better get comfortable. We're going to be here for a while. No, actually, what I meant by being done is most of the little stuff we've been through, pretty much the toolbar. We've been through most of the attributes. We know how to work that, transform groups, stuff like that. A few more things that we're going to go over. We'll touch base on some of those today. And then after that, that's pretty much it for the little things. Like I said, we're going to move on to making our own map, to getting into the good stuff. That's what's going to happen next, right? So that's it. I have really nothing else to say about that. Let's just jump right into it. So what I got for you today is just little odds and ends that either we haven't gotten to in the series, or it's things that I either consider a tip or a trick of some sort, or maybe it's just a good habit to be into. And I think some of these things you should be doing every day, or using every day, while you make your maps. Or one or two of these are things that people, they're aware of, they know, and they've been using this tool, but they haven't been using it to its potential, or they haven't been using it properly, let's say. So we're going to go over that, right? So a little bit of a list, but it shouldn't take too long as I quit my yap in here and get the schooling, right? All right, so let's just jump right into it. Let's stop wasting time here. Actually, I'm the one wasting time, so let me jump right into it. All right, so let's start out with we'll start out with interactive placement. That's a really easy one, right? All right, so most of us know interactive placement. Take this tree, for example. Now, we know that Control B, we can move this anywhere we want. And for those of you who are new to the channel or just joining us, Control B, B as in boy, is the interactive placement. So you select your object. You either select it like I did here on the viewport, or you just select it right through your scene graph there. Hit Control B, point to where you want it, click, and there you go. Okay, now say you want more than one tree. This is the part that a lot of people are skipping over. Now you can hit Control D as in dog, or D as in duplicate, right? So that duplicates the tree. You drag over another tree. Now you don't want them both facing the same direction. You want to mix it up a little bit and add a little bit of spice to life, right? Some variety and mix things up, a little bit of chaos. So we rotate it. Okay, so if you want to duplicate that again, you can keep repeating that process. But we don't really want to do that. That's kind of the long way of going about that. So let's delete that tree, right? So we'll pick the tree all over again. We'll select it. This time we're going to hit Control B for interactive placement. That gets us into the mode. Now we're going to hold down our left click, okay? Now hold it down, and I want you to hit Shift each time you want to place that tree. Just hit Shift, Shift, all the while holding down your left click. And when you're done, finally leave go of your left click. Okay, not bad, right? So that was a quick way to lay down some trees. We duplicated them, and not really a problem, but the only thing that it didn't do is rotate the tree. We have to go back and we have to rotate, all of those trees by hand. Or do we? We do not. And most of, like I said, 98% of you guys probably already know this. And right now you're bored off your rocker because this is interactive placement 101, which is exactly what it is. All right, so the last option we have here for interactive placement, select your tree. We hit Control B to get us into placement mode. Left click, we hold that down. And this time, instead of hitting Shift, hit Control. Each time you hit Control to place that tree, it spins that tree on its y-axis, right? And when you're finally done, let go of your left click. And that was not so much the trick, but that's the idea. What's happening there with the control is it spins it on its y-axis. So this way, if you're laying down multiple trees or multiple items, doesn't have to be a tree. Like I said, it's giving a little bit of randomness to it. So not all your trees are facing the exact same direction and they look identical and stale, and you want to mix it up a little bit. You'd be surprised at the number of people I've seen that use the interactive placement as far as control B, but that's as far as it goes. You know, they're not using it, you know, with the shift or control, the spinach, or none of that. So let you know that that option is there. You know, these guys really should be utilizing that, you know, every single day. I don't know why anybody wouldn't be, but still, there's people that are not. All right, now one of our last tutorials, or one of the previous tutorials, we went over moving around. Now we know that holding your either left, right, Alt button, ALT, depending on how many you have, if you hold down one of those, and then your left mouse button, middle mouse button, or right mouse button, and we can move around. That's how we move around a map, like you see here. Okay. Everybody knows that. That was probably the first video, or one of the first videos that we did, moving around. So that's one option. Option number two is to hit the eyeball looking thingy there, and that gets us into first person mode. And most of you guys are aware of this. And this here is a great option. It's new to Giants editor this year and FS22, and lets you see things exactly as you would from the perspective of the player in the game, right? And that's the name of the game, right? Is to really see things for exactly how they would be, you know, not from a bird's eye view or, you know, hovering 10 feet away. Just exactly how the player would see it. Awesome option to have. Comes in really handy. I suggest that you use this every day, but that was not my tip or my trick or whatever we're talking about here. There is one last way to move around. This I did not go over in a previous video, and it's not in the shortcuts, but if you hold down your right mouse button, right, hold that down, and then same thing, W, A, S, and D, just like you would in a video game, and you can basically fly around. See that? That's pretty cool, right? All right, I know that we did not go over that before, but I wanted to get that out there so you guys know that that option is available. Again, hold in your right mouse button, and then W, A, S, and D moves you around. Okay. Next thing I have for you, you guys should be using, I use this one tons and tons, is actually putting an object into frame, right? And this, you do this by pressing the F as in Frank. And the way I use this, now there's probably not the way it's meant to be used, but it's the way I use it. If there's an object that I can't find, or if I know where it's at and it's clear across the other end of the map, like say I just pick a random tree out of here. Now I can see it over there because right there's the gizmo, but let's say I was facing this way and I have no clue where that tree is at. I would hit F as in Frank, and man, it would bring me right to that tree, right smack dab to it. And that's awesome. Really what it's doing is it's putting the object into frame, but it's a really easy way to, one, get from one point of the map to the other, and two, find an object that, you know, you just can't locate otherwise. I've had it more times than I can count, actually, that object has been underground, and that's where I ended up finding it. All right. Okay. The next one I kind of want to touch on really quick when we're talking about moving around and navigating and stuff is a gaming mouse. This one you can consider, I guess, a tip of sorts, right? A little pro tip. Now, if you look at this illustration I have here, this picture of it's a cone ammo, and that's the house that, or mouse. Yeah, that's the house. That's the house I use at my mouse. That is the mouse that I use at the house. All right. I got two setups. I got one at home, and I have a mobile setup because I spend a lot of time on the road at work. And that's the reason now that a lot more videos have been getting out than they have in the past. I decided to bring the show on the road, so to speak. So I spend a lot of time traveling, you know, with working and stuff like that. And in my downtime, I've been doing videos for you guys. But anyhow, enough of that. All right. So the picture that you see here, this mouse, you can see the objects that I have listed in red there, right? We have the Alt button, the Control button, and that little Shift button down there I had mapped to the Insert, right? And what I did is you have profiles with your gaming mouse, and you can remap your buttons, most of you guys know. So I made a profile strictly for making maps. And between the Alt and the Control, that allows me to move around one-handedly, right? I only need one hand to move around. You know, I use my thumb there and I hold in that Alt button, and then, you know, I got my other two fingers or for the left, right, and then the middle mouse buttons. And then the insert, that comes in handy when I am creating splines, right? Real easy. I can create splines one-handed. Don't need to have two hands on the keyboards at all time kind of thing, right? All right, so let me get this image down and we'll move on to the next thing. All right, but just keep that in mind. A gaming mouse, I know most of you guys have them, so take advantage of it, man. If you have all those extra buttons and you're not currently playing a game or anything like that, start using it in your mapping. You'll figure out tons of different ways to use it besides those three that I just mentioned, right? So it's a good tip. Utilize your gaming mouse. All right, now the next one, and this one is very, very common knowledge, but for some reason people haven't quite, I don't want to say they don't have a handle on it, but is the gizmo. Now, the first thing we're going to get out of the way is that it is actually called the gizmo. It's not called the thingy or the doohickey or the thingamabob or the whatchamacallit, or, you know, it's called the gizmo. Sounds a little weird, you know, funny, but it is actually called the gizmo. All right, now I shouldn't have to, but I'm going to really quickly just go over the gizmo itself. All right, so you can't see it here because it's buried behind this green column, but there is a green arrow. That is your y-axis, lets you move up and down. The blue arrow, that is your z-axis, and the red arrow is your x-axis, okay? Now you have those squares here. You have a red, blue, and a green. If I highlight the green, right there, you can see that I am able to move on both the x and the I'm drawing a blank again. It happens every night, man. I can move on the X and the Z axis. And then the same thing if I pick one of these other ones. I can move on two of the axes, the Y and the X on that one. That's what those boxes are for. All right, now the lines going around it, you should know by now that it's for rotate. You can tilt one way, you can tilt the other way. See that? Pretty fancy, right? And then the last thing is these little square boxes on the end of your arrows are for scale. So you can go bigger, smaller. Okay, now I saw a video recently where a gentleman was saying that on the new editor, there's lots of bugs and they mostly revolve around the gizmo. I'm here to put that theory to bed, basically, because really there is no bugs. I think it's just mistaken identity is what it is. Look up here on the top of your toolbar again, and these are three of the buttons that we didn't go over, so we'll go over that really quick. One of them says translation mode. That puts the gizmo into translation mode. It gets rid of everything else except for the arrows that you need for translation. Looking over here on the right hand side of my attributes panel, translation is the first three boxes. We have X, Y, and Z. Then we have rotate and we have scale. Okay, that all relates to your gizmo. So if you want to know where in space you're moving around, you just look over there and you can see your translate is changing. Those buttons are changing there, or the values are changing. Next one in line, we've got rotate. All right, and this is just putting you in that single mode. And then we have scale. All right, so it goes a little bit further, and I think this is where the problem's coming in with the gentleman thinking that there is a bug. All right, so if we go up the file, we go down to preferences, and we go over to shortcuts. Scroll down a little bit, and you can see right here, gizmo, translate, rotate, and scale, W, E, and R, okay? So if we hit E, that put me into, let's see here. Well, let's see, W puts me into the translate, E's got me into rotate, and R's got me into scale. Is that right? E's rotate, R's scale. Yep. So what is happening, and this happens to me a lot too. When I'm working with a spline, sometimes I want to reverse my spline, right? And there's another shortcut. I hit R for reverse my spline. But what I also did is I changed my gizmo. So I come back to an object, I'm looking, I'm like, what in the world? Just tap E a couple times, you know, and it'll get you right back into where you belong. Okay. So a lot of people didn't really know that those little shortcuts exist for your gizmo. I don't use it all that often. Not really. More often than not, it was done accidentally. But there should be a way that you can lock it, you know, to get rid of those shortcuts, but not a big deal. So I don't really think that there's a bug with the gizmo or anything like that. I think he's accidentally hitting those buttons and he's not aware that that option exists for the gizmo. And one of the last things with the gizmo is if you go to preferences again, except this time go over to viewport, you look under the manipulation, right? And if you see this frame gizmo size, let's change that to 4. We'll hit apply. And hey, look at that. Gizmo got bigger. So if you have problems with your eyesight and you don't see too well or anything like that, you can change the size of your gizmo if you need to. Now, if you're like blind as a bat and you really can't see, then you can do something like this. And hey, check that out. And what do you know? It even works. So if you need a gizmo that's bigger than life, or, there you go. Do whatever. It's the sky's the limit, literally. All right, so let's get out of there. But anyhow, point being here is that there's just most of these things that people aren't utilizing are all options, right? And I think everybody's just jumping right into the editor. They start banging away and they're making their map, but they don't realize that just go up the preferences, and have a look around. I mean, you can see now that when I select something and I move things around, right? Or here you can see that I had a little bit of a grid showed up before, like right here. I had it there for a second. There you go. See that grid? Okay, I have a grid show up, or when I'm tilting it, you can see the amount of degrees of tilt that I'm getting there, so I can see it as it's the same thing when I look up in my, well, it's actually not the same, so I don't want to confuse you with that one. But anyhow, you can see the amount of tilt that I'm putting into it, right? Just by looking at that number there. And these are all options that you find in your preferences. You can go in there and you just look through each one of your preferences, play around with them, see what it does, and then you can have it do some pretty cool stuff. I've been asked a question lately when I do my painting. Okay. So let me blow this up here real quick. And if you look down there, you can see there's animal mud as I move around. I'm not actually painting anything, but it's kind of previewing it for me. And this comes in really handy. And the way to do that is if you go down here and where was that? Was it in general? No, that should be viewport. Right here, terrain editing preview. If I unclick that, see, I can hit apply. It goes away. Now, for me, it was a heck of a lot easier having that on than it was having it off, because as I paint now, I won't necessarily say it slows it down, but if you have a slower system, that may be a factor. Maybe. I'm not saying it will or it will not. I know some things that you do regarding making maps and stuff like that. There are certain things that you can do that definitely move slower on a slower system than it does that if you have a better system. Like I said, this is my traveling rig right now, so this is only a GTX. It's not too slouchy, but it gets the job done. Now at home with my RTX, I want for nothing. I think just blasts away, right? So there's definitely two different approaches I take to certain things, depending on the system that I'm on. So on the slower system, it doesn't handle things quite as well. So just keep that in mind, right? So when you guys make some of these changes, that it all, how fast your system is or your graphics card is definitely going to be a factor in some of these, okay? But anyhow, the point I was trying to make there is to pay attention to your preferences. Go through all your settings and your shortcuts and stuff like that. Play around with things, and in the end, that's ultimately what people are skipping. They're using the tool, but they're just not using it to its full advantage, right? Because that's what's going on. So, like I said, you can enable a grid down here, which is kind of cool, right? They have all kinds of stuff, man. All kinds of stuff. And that show translation pane, that grid that you saw there, that's what you were looking there. And the delta manipulation, that was when I was tilting one on the rotation where you can see the numbers coming up there. That's what that was there, right? And there's a bigger grid that you can enable there if you want to play around with that. But we're going to skip that for now because I'm starting to yap a little too much and we've got things that we got to get done, right? Alrighty. The next one. And by the way, if you're in a mode like I am here in paint mode and you want to get out of it, instead of going up there and hitting the old paint button again, just hit escape. I'm going to get you right out of that mode, right? Real quick, real easy. So another shortcut. All right, so let's get into a next one. This one, a lot of people call this like a copy all, paste all. Now, most of you know about this. Some of you don't, so we're going to go over it. It's something that's going to save you some time in the future. So anyhow, every once in a while when you're working in one of your XML files, you're going to want either the translate, rotate, or the scale. Mostly the translate, sometimes the rotate. But you're going to want all three of those values. You're going to want the X, the Y, and the Z, right? And you're going to want to copy those over into your XML or vice versa from the XML over into the editor. So instead of going through one by one and, we highlight it and go over to the XML and then you paste it, Just click in that first box there, right? Click in it. Now you hit Shift, alternate, and then C as in cat, right? For copy. C as in copy. All right. Get over to the XML that you want to work with. Now I already had something there, but you hit Control V as in Victor, and that pastes all three numbers right in there, right? That's pretty awesome. That works pretty good. Now this does work both ways, right? So let's start a new line here, and let's say I've got 10, 5, and 4. I got these numbers here, right? Now I can copy these numbers, take all three of these values, Control C as in copy, go back over into the editor. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to hover over scale, and I'm going to hit Shift, alternate, V as in Victor, and there you go. It just copied all three of those values, just copied in there. I changed my scale. There's my 10, my 5, and the 4 that I had in there. All right, now that comes in so handy. You know, make sure you guys are utilizing all these things, and you're using that when you're making your maps. Like I said, I'm trying to get all this out there now because we either skipped it before or it's just something you should be doing, right? And like I said, this is it. You know, we're getting past the little stuff. So this is the last of the little stuff. It's the last hurrah. And then we're going to get into the really good stuff after this, okay? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about importing objects, right? So normally when we want to import something, we go over to we go to File and we go to Import. Okay, now normally you're not starting here, you're starting way at the beginning, right? You're starting at the very beginning of your file tree, like this PC, and then you have to go to Data, and then Program Files, you know, go down to Steam. Oh, let's see, Steam Apps, and then Comment, and you get the idea, you know, Farming Simulator, and then I got to get into Data. Let's see, so you got to drill all the way through this list, and every time that you want to import something, it gets to be, you know, pardon my French, kind of a pain in the ass. We don't want to have to do that every single time. Nobody wants to do that. So instead, if you already have the folder open, which I generally do, when I'm working on my maps, I usually have a text editor open. I have a couple folders open. You know, one of them might be my placeables, you know, like my local files for my mod map. And then the other one might be game files like I have here. Actually, these are not game files, but these are for one of my mods that I'm working on. So these are my local files. But anyhow, my point being, so let's get out of there. Let's go to, let's say, Farm Barn. Let's take this and just drag it right over into your viewport right there, into the editor. Okay, it showed up at the bottom of my list. So all I need to do is hit Control B to get me into the interactive placement mode. And there I go. Really, really easy. And how much time does that save you? I mean, tons, man. You really don't want to be messing around drilling through file trees when you just drag that sucker over and dump it in your map, right? Easy peasy. All right, so remember that importing objects is a hell of a lot easier than just, you know, drilling through a file tree. It's just drag it over and dump it into your map and be done with it. Easy, easy, easy. All right, so here's another one that's going to throw some people off sometimes, and I'll see if I can explain this one the best that I can without confusing anybody. All right, so let's take this billboard that we have here, right? We're going to put it next to this laundromat, I guess that would be. Okay, so now these are two separate objects. All right, let me see. Hold on a second. Let me prep this because I'm going to want access to these without having to scroll through a whole big list here. Let's hit X on that. Oh, let's not do that. That's another thing that these guys really want to pay attention to when you're selecting an object, right? So if I didn't have that selected yet, when I just click on it in the viewport, I didn't necessarily select the entire object. All right, you need to look over into your scene graph and look at the parent transform group, right? That's what you want to be selecting. You don't want to just click on something because you're going to leave objects behind. So now that I highlighted, you know, this laundry place right there, now I can hit Control X to get rid of it, right? Or not get rid of it, but I want to cut it because I want to stick that somewhere else. So let me drill some of these down here. That's the other thing that you guys could be doing too, is right click on something and it just hit collapse all. So you're not doing what I was doing and just going through one by one, you know, having to close everything up. All right, so anyhow, all I'm really doing right now is I'm getting that laundry place a little bit closer to the bottom of my list because I want to work with them and I don't want to have to be spending all my time scrolling up and down and up and down. So I'm just getting those a little bit closer. So bear with me for 1 second here and let me get those where I want them. All right, so you see what I was doing there as far as Control X and Control V, and that was cut and paste, okay? Now, let's say for some reason that this billboard here, you want that to be a part of this laundromat. You know, like maybe that's just maybe it's a mod you're working on or a placeable or something like that. So when somebody puts that laundromat in, this billboard comes with it. Right? When you select this laundromat, you want that billboard to be a part of it and you want to move around. Okay, so what are your options really to get that billboard in there? Okay, so we can select the billboard. We can hit Control X, right? Sounds reasonable. Go over to your laundromat and hit Control V, paste it in there. Okay, great. It's in there. You can see that it just showed up, right? It's definitely in that list. Yep, it's down there. Right there's the billboard, but there's only one problem. What the hell happened to the billboard? It's gone. All right, well, where is that billboard? Holy hell, it's all the way over there. All right, well, that's something that we don't really want. No, what happened? What in the world is going on? All right, well, let me see if I can explain this to you. Okay, so let's Control Z here a little bit and start undoing some things, and we'll get that billboard back to where it was, outside of the laundromat. Okay, so with the billboard highlighted, we'll look at the attributes, okay? Now you look at the translate for the X, Y, and the Z. Now those are basically, I'm not sure how to explain it. It's kind of it's a global value, right? So that's where this billboard is sitting in the world space in reference to the rest of the world, basically, because it's all by itself. It's not, you know, tied up in anything. It's just out there by itself. Okay, but once we move it into the laundromat, now it's a child of that transform group of it's a child object of the supermarket or the supermarket. I'm looking right here. It's a Freudian thing. I was reading supermarket of the laundromat. Okay, but what we want is we want that these values to be in relation to the laundromat now, you know, not in relation to the rest of the world, right? And see, that's what's happening. When you're hitting cut and paste, you're keeping this same value, right? And when this billboard becomes a child object of this laundromat, those values will be a little bit different. They won't be the same because they'll now be in relation to the laundromat and not, you know, and the laundromat will be in relation to the rest of the world, but the sign itself should be in relation to the laundromat. And that's not what's happening when you hit cut and paste. So instead of hitting cut and paste, all right, so we have our billboard highlighted. Press your middle mouse button, okay, and drag that up into your laundromat, okay, and it definitely moved. You can see it. It's right here at the bottom. But now when I highlight the laundromat, there it is. Okay, it's not up there in right field or outer space or wherever we just grabbed it from. Okay, and if you look at the values, they definitely changed. And why did they change? Because now they're in reference to the laundromat, and instead of its own global value out there all by itself, right? And when you select laundry place and move it around, it is now part of that. Okay, I had a lot of questions about that one, guys. We're getting really, really confused on that one. And the other thing is not zeroing things out. That's another problem that people are having. You know, they're working on placeables and stuff like that. And when they put it in their map, they're not necessarily getting an error that's saying it didn't load. They're seeing that it did load, but they can't find it. Where in the world is it? Well, I'll get to this when we do placeables, but it's not being zeroed out. And the reason I'm touching on this now is because there's a really easy way to zero those fields. So if we look over here to translate X, Y, and Z, let's hover over top of that one. And let's say we want that translate. We want all of those to be 0. We're going to zero that out. That's what I mean by zeroing something out. I'm entering zeros and I'm taking the values completely out. Hit alternate G. There you go. How easy was that, man? It doesn't get any easier than that, right? Let's undo that. And it's the same thing works for rotate and scale. Now it's not alternate G, so if you go back to file and you look at your preferences, go back to your shortcuts, and you can see that reset translation is alternate G, rotation is R, and scale is S. So when you want to zero some of these out, it's just a really quick way to go about it. Like I said, don't worry about, the whole thing with the placeables and stuff like that. We'll cover that when we get to placeables and stuff like that, because like I said, it's going to be a lot of good stuff after this, man. It is for sure. All right, so next I want to go over something that's actually a function of Windows, right? But you guys should definitely be utilizing this, and it's almost painful to watch the amount of people that, say I want you to go through this list of fields here, and we have 82 fields, but I want you to select, I don't know, say 2 through 67. All right, so that you can select one of them, and you can hit Control and select multiple, and that's what I see happen. I see people going through this list, and one by one, oh my Lord, it hurts my eyes to watch that. Please don't do that. Okay, go up here. Like I said, this is a Windows function. This predates Giants Editor. Okay, so let's start using this. Let's go up there to field 2. We'll click on that. Go all the way down there. What did I say? Field 67. Go down there. All right, hit Shift and then click on 67. And wow, look at that. It's selected every single field between 2 and 67, including those two. That's the way you should be selecting multiple items in your scene graph, right? I mean, that is if they're all right next to each other. If you have to skip some, then you might have to hit Control and select multiples that way. But my Lord, you would be surprised at how many people I have seen just click. Like 15 minutes later, I'm still waiting for them to select all these objects and just finally get on with the point. It's like me and talking too much about things that I just shouldn't be talking about. Just get to the point, will you? Should take my own advice, I guess. All right. So anyhow, let's keep moving on here. Just so I'm not the guy that's blubbering about nothing. All right. So how many of you guys out there use Notes? Right. I went over this in one of the videos for the 9.0.3 update. It's something new to the editor. How many people are using it? Raise your hands. All right. I'm kind of wondering how many of you actually did raise your hands. Personally, I used them. In the beginning, it was just a novelty and it was fun and okay, that's cool. But it wasn't until I really started to get into it that I realized they are extremely, extremely useful, right? So, and what I'm talking about is you go up to create, go down the note. Okay, we just created a note. Now, say I was working on this billboard here, and I don't know, maybe I got something left to do in this area. So hit Control B, put your note down. I don't know, whatever you want your note to say. Mine's just going to say XYZ, and I want it to be yellow. Of course, you can pick the color of your note. And that's kind of the end of it. You can put this note wherever you want. You can stick it right to the billboard. You can put it on the ground. You can do whatever you want with it. All right. Now you go over here to your scene graph in that note. Just kind of, hit Control G, put it in its own group, right? Hit Notes. Okay. And there you go. All my notes are in one place. Now, if I happen to be off on some part of the map, working over here, and I finally get finished up with what I'm doing. Let's go through my notes. What else do I need to do? And this is my to-do list, right? Oh man, there's only one thing left to do on here. It says note. What the hell is note? Well, it says XYZ. I don't know. Let's find out. Well, then I hit F as in Frank to get me over there to that note. XYZ. Let's back out. Oh, it's the billboard. Okay. All right. So then I do whatever I needed to do on the billboard and I'm done. And the reason that these come in extremely useful, and man, I'm guilty of this, and I try not to be. Trust me, I try not to be, and I'm getting better. When you're working on your maps, and this holds especially true for you guys that are doing the larger cards, the 4X and the 8X and the 16s. Okay, when you start working on a particular part of the map, you should be trying your damnedest, right? As hard as you possibly can to work that area from start to absolute finished. That includes everything. That includes, your collisions, getting all your shrubbery down and your grasses. Everything's colored in nicely. Everything's placed the way you need it to. Nothing should be left undone or even half done or just incomplete in any way. Try to when you move on from that area, try to make sure it's about as complete as it could possibly be. Okay, and the reason I say that is when you get into these maps, these really large maps, and you're like, all right, man, I'm finally done. I'm going to put this on the internet next week, and that's about the end of it. We're done. Well, you only have a few things to fix, but where are they? They're spread all the way across that map. You know, you get bored, you move on, and you left something not finished. Well, now you have so much of your map to get done that you need to go back to each one of those areas that you left incomplete. And if you didn't make a note, you don't really know where those areas are. You know, players are going to find them when they're on your map and they're playing there. What the hell is this? You know, there's a giant hole, or, man, I'm telling you, I'm guilty of it. I am definitely guilty of it. I still find things. And like the Elm Creek extension, that kind of went the wrong way for me, man. I was in such a hurry to get that out. I didn't follow a lot of my own advice, and there was a lot of errors that needed to be fixed, and I'm still finding things that need to be fixed, right? Because I wasn't taking advantage of notes and stuff like that at the time. So leave a note. If you're leaving something unfinished, leave a note what needs to get done, because at some point you are going to forget about it. You're going to have incomplete whatever all over the map. You know, there's stuff that's going to need to be fixed or moved or tweaked. So leave notes. Start taking advantage of the notes, because it sucks, man. It really sucks when you put these things out there and then the players find them. And then next thing you know, the comment section is filled up with stuff that doesn't work. And as a mapper, you know, mistakes happen, and I'll be the first to own it. You know, I screwed up. It is what it is, you know, but you really want to try to keep that to a minimum, you know, you really do. So that's the two things that I have to say about that is, one, try to work an area as complete as possible. Don't leave things half finished. And if you're going to leave them unfinished for any reason, leave yourself a note. So you know to get back there, you know to finish it, and later down the road, there's not going to be any surprises for the player, and you're not going to have to be like hunting and searching around a map, just, you know, going up and down every road and inspecting every corner of a field to see what you forgot to do, or, you know, what you didn't finish and forgot about since then. All right. So start using notes. That was what I had to say about that. Okay. So another one that, and I'm not, you guys definitely limit to texture. You guys know how this works. All I'm saying is use it, right? I shouldn't really have to give you an example of this, but I will if I have to. Okay, so let's go into pencil mode. Let's pick something that we could see a little bit better, like concrete. All right, let's say I don't want this path here, or maybe the grass. I just, you know, I want concrete instead of grass next to that, right? So let's limit that to just grass. And in this way, that concrete's not spilling over to the field. It's not spilling into my trackway there. And I can color that in super, super quick. You know, I'm not having to try and pencil that in like bit by bit. Again, this is one of those things that I'm amazed at the amount of people that are not using it. You know, I watched a video and trust me, it was there. I can see it in the video. I can see when he selected the texture layer, right beneath it, it said limited texture, and he completely disregarded it. And he commenced to coloring something in. Poor guy, probably took him 40 minutes. And he wasn't even done. I gave up on him by that time. I was like, man, this is painful. Just get over it, dude. Just limit the texture and be done. But he didn't. I don't know why. And you can see how fast I colored that in. So I'm pretty confident that 99% of you guys, you know, especially if you watch the tutorial, even if you didn't know about it before, you're probably definitely using that now, because it's a real time saver. But I just had to put it out there because I'm still seeing it that people aren't using it. So anyhow, make sure you do that. Limit the texture. Okay. I'm going to say that's probably all I really need to touch on right now. I don't know if there's too much. I was going to go over painting with splines, but the splines and stuff in itself, especially painting with spline, that's an entire tutorial all on its own. So I'm not going to get too much into that right now. Just know that the option is there. And if you really want to start goofing around with that, if you go up to scripts, okay, and you go down to terrain, you have paint terrain by spline, place objects on terrain by spline, and then you can set terrain height by spline. And in future tutorials, I am going to be going over each and every one of those with you. And I'm going to show you multiple ways to do that, not just the one that they give you here. If you go into your script editor and you go down to terrain, that folder there, this is where you can edit that, right? That's where you're going to change your values for, the ID of the texture that you want to use and how wide you want that texture to be and stuff like that. Like I said, it's a lesson all by itself, so I'm not going to get into it now. I did want to include that as part of this video, but I'm not. And that's my prerogative. So there. You're going to have to wait until I get to that video. But anyhow, no. Like I said, those were the few things that I wanted to touch on because either I know that I missed them personally and I didn't include those into a video, or I just felt like they were things that you should be doing as a mapper to make your life much easier in the long run. Okay. So like I said, this is it. This here is wrapping up all of the little things I think we're going to put in the rear view mirror. That's all going to be behind us. Okay. And starting with probably, don't hold me to this, but I'm going to say probably with the next video, we're going to start making our map, right? We're going to get into, you should already know the new mod from game and getting yourself to the point where you have a recreation of, whether it's the French map, the Alpine map, or the US map. And then from there, I'm going to show you how to get objects out of there and flatten everything out and all that stuff, all that good stuff, right? Or maybe I'll come up with, I don't know, one more video has something to do with something else in between now and then. I'm not sure. I do have an idea on something, but anyhow, here I am talking too much about something that really doesn't pertain to this video. So with that being said, I'm going to let you go and look forward to good stuff from here on out. And I'm Bauer Brown, and I'll see you on the next one.